Our next talk of the scientific session is by Professor A.K. Tripathi sir on CML Challenges Remain. I invite sir to the stage for the session. I also invite Professor B. Dubey and Professor V.P. Singh sir to chair the session. Sir.
Good afternoon. Respected chairpersons, Professor Dubey, Professor Singh, my dear colleagues, students. Dr. Tilak has confused me because you have given us so sumptuous lunch and then asking us to remain awake. Anyway, I will try to be as simple and basic as possible so that you are not confused. Chronic myeloid leukemia has three things in its credit. Its commonest type of chronic leukemia in India is the first malignancy described to be associated with consistent cytogenetic abnormality, that is Philadelphia chromosome. And again, it's the first malignancy which is a successful example of targeted therapy. There is a change in nomenclature, as all of you know. Initially, it was known as chronic myeloproliferative disorders, but now the name is myeloproliferative neoplasm. So CML is included in MPN, which is described as heterogeneous group of clonal hematopoietic stem cell neoplasms with excessive proliferation of one or more of erythroid, megakaryocytic or myeloid lineage, resulting in increased number of cells in peripheral blood. So this is definition of MPN. And these are different types of MPN. I will concentrate on chronic myeloid leukemia, which is defined as MPN that originates in an abnormal pluripotent bone marrow stem cell and is consistently associated with Philadelphia chromosome and or BCR-ABL fusion gene. And this is a cartoon showing reciprocal translocation between the long arm of chromosome 9 and long arm of chromosome 22, leading to hybrid formation BCR-ABL. And this small 22 chromosome is known as Philadelphia chromosome. This is a typical karyotype. You can see the translocation between 9 and 22. 22 chromosome has become shorter. And what happens? BCR-ABL has ATP binding site, which phosphorylates signals leading to neoplastic transformation. And there are downstream signals leading to increased proliferation of cells, decreased maturation of cells, and decreased adherence. The final outcome is neoplastic transformation of cell and generation of leukemia. Clinical presentation. The median age is smaller. The median age in Western literature is 55-60 years, but in India it is 30 to 38 years. One does not know the cause, but this is also a point of concern. It can be asymptomatic, which is incidental diagnosis. Our major presentations are weakness, fatigue, splenomegaly, and weight loss. And these are unusual presentations which one must know, because once you suspect, only then you go for diagnosis. These patients can present with infection, thrombotic, because they are prothrombotic. So they can present with different manifestations of thrombosis, even bleeding. It is hard to believe if platelets are normal or increased, why should there be bleeding? Because these platelets are abnormal. So they don't act properly, although they are more in numbers. Priapism and visual disorders. And their second phase is accelerated phase, which is diagnosed. A patient of CML chronic phase has increasing anemia, unexplained fever, larger dose of drugs are needed to control the count, spleen is enlarging. And if blast cell is between 10 to 20%, basophil is more than 20%, platelets less than 1 lakh, and also if there is cytogenetic clonal evolution. So this characterizes presence of accelerated phase. And the terminal phase is called blast phase, presence of more than 20% peripheral blast cell in peripheral blood or bone marrow. 50% cases are myeloid conversion, 30% lymphoid, and rest are others. Without any treatment, the natural course of CML is this: chronic phase, median survival 3 to 5 years, accelerated phase, only few months, and blast phase is terminal. But this is without treatment. The scenario has now changed. Diagnosis suspected and also made with peripheral blood smear examination, high leukocyte count with variety of immature cells of myeloid series, and presence of Philadelphia chromosome on karyotypic analysis. If karyotypic analysis is not possible, then one can go for FISH or molecular, that is by qPCR demonstration of BCR ABL transcript. I want to show the history at our center. Between 2000 to 2008 at KG Medical University, Lucknow, at my department, 20% patient would come in late stage. You can see the top one, CAP, accelerated phase plus blast phase. It is here. 20% patient would come in late stage, but after, due to more awareness and facilities, now we have only 5% patients coming in late stage. So patients now come earlier, which is better for them because now they can be cured or completely controlled. And they come early in the disease. Earlier, the median period or interval between onset of symptoms and coming to the hospital was almost 20 months. But now it is reduced to few months. So definitely there is change in public awareness and diagnostic facilities. Now we are getting patient in earlier stage. Initially, it was palliative care, then came busulfan, followed by interferon alpha, hydroxyurea to control the count. Then came bone marrow transplantation, which is the only curative method. And now it is era of targeted therapy with the discovery of tyrosine kinase inhibitors. And Brand Drucker, which was instrumental for this discovery. What does this do? As I told you that BCR ABL kinase has ATP binding site, which leads to phosphorylation of substrate and then signaling downstream signaling leading to neoplastic transformation. Imatinib blocks the ATP binding site of ABL kinase, but leading to blocking all the downstream signals downwards. What is the treatment of chronic phase CML? The treatment of chronic phase CML is tyrosine kinase inhibitor. Now we have 4 types of tyrosine kinase inhibitors. First line is imatinib, second line dasatinib, nilotinib and bosutinib. And all these are available in India. You can choose any one depending on score of disease. If patient has come in late stage, means so-called stage is more accelerated phase, definitely you like to choose second line, maybe one of these, red one. Availability. There is no use of writing a drug which is not available. So you must ensure that drug is available before prescribing. Comorbidity. These drugs also have side effects. Like nilotinib has metabolic side effects. The patient has diabetes, hypertension, hyperlipidemia. Do not give nilotinib. Dasatinib has side effects in the lungs, pleural effusion, and pulmonary hypertension. So if patient has cardiopulmonary problem, do not give dasatinib. Imatinib is very good drug, which has least side effects. That is why the first drug of choice in almost most centers in India is imatinib, which is cheaper also. Tolerability. It also depends on, if the patient does not tolerate one, you must choose the second one. Drug interaction, cost, and others. If patient comes in accelerated phase, prognosis is not good. In that, if possible, explore the possibility of bone marrow transplantation and also give second line TKI. Blast phase is very depressing to treat, but you must try for the possibility of bone marrow transplantation. If patient has myeloid conversion, you give TKI plus AML-like treatment. If patient has lymphoid conversion, you give TKI plus ALT-like treatment. And if possible, you can include patient in clinical trials. And this is the survival of patient. You can see almost here. This is the survival is almost more than 90% at the end of 8 years. So now lifespan of patient of CML is as good as any person of that age. What is the duration of treatment? Does patient need to take treatment for lifelong, or you can stop? So now we can stop treatment in some segments of patients, which is known as operational cure. One cannot say that CML is curable. The only curative method is bone marrow transplantation. But we can attain this operational cure in some patients, and I will show you the results. These are different trials. You give imatinib or TKI for some time, and then stop and follow the patient. I would draw your attention here. In this trial, imatinib and in some patient interferon was given. The drug was given for at least 2 years, and patients were followed for more than 6 years. You see here, 5 years, almost for 38 patients did not develop disease. In this trial, 47%. Here, 62%. So once you give imatinib for a few years, stop it, and then follow the patient. Around half of the patient will not develop disease. That means these patients are cured. And the interesting thing is, those patients who relapse, who develop disease again, they develop within 2 years. You follow the patient every month, and 2 months, the patient does not develop disease again. Within 2 years, that means they will not develop again. That means they are cured. So this is a very good sign, this very good situation where now we can counsel our patients that in some patients we can stop the treatment and then go for the cure. Who can be given the option? Some patients say that, okay, I don't want to take drug for lifelong because that makes me feel that I'm a diseased person. So you give treatment for some time and then stop. I want to be tried in this regime. Some patients want good quality of life because every drug has some side effects. And people also want to avoid long-term side effects. Even every single drug has long-term side effects. Also to avoid financial toxicity. Younger patient, they say that if I was 60 years of age, I could have agreed for lifelong treatment. My age is 25 years, 28 years. I don't want to take drug lifelong. So please put me in this trial and then start treatment in such a way that the drug can be stopped. And female patients who want to be pregnant, because during pregnancy we cannot give TKI. In these patients, we can try to stop the treatment. And where you can stop? After giving TKI, if there is a good control of disease, that means the reduction, if there is a 4-log reduction in the molecular parameters. So there should be good control of disease, and the good control should be sustained for at least 2 years. And after stopping the drug, there should be facility of regular monitoring so that you can detect early relapse and also consent. If the patient fulfills all these criteria, you can stop the treatment and then follow this. But there is a still challenge. 10 to 20% patients do not respond to imatinib. And we do not know perfectly who is not going to respond. There was a paper last year. They tried to find out who is going to respond and who is not going to respond based on some molecular analysis. And they examined 71 candidates by next generation sequencing and examined 23 somatic variants and found out that these variants were associated with no response to imatinib. So on day 1, if you are able to get these findings of these somatic variants, you can decide, okay, this patient is not going to get imatinib, this patient you should give dasatinib or other drugs. And you see here, the patient who had somatic here, no somatic variants, means no mutations. Here, the response rate was quite good. Almost 90% patient had very good control. As compared to those who had these mutations, only 50% had very good control. And also this reflected in survival. So even before starting treatment, based on molecular profile, you can choose a particular drug so that patient develops maximum response. So somatic variants in epigenetic modifiers can predict failure of response to imatinib, but not to second generation tyrosine kinase inhibitors. Another challenge is resistance. These patients may develop resistance to tyrosine kinase after some time. We had a small study on 473 CML patients and found out that 23% patients develop resistance later on. And this resistance is mainly due to point mutation in the kinase domain of BCL-ABL area. Or it could be because of overexpression, or there may be some alternate pathway. We also had a paper and tried to find out different types of mutation in patients of CML who were on imatinib and developed resistance. And these were mutations, kinase domain mutations we found in our study. We found in 16 patients. This one is, okay. And these are types of mutations, although most common mutation in literature is P-loop. But in our study, the most common was SS2 mutation. And although this is crowded slide, but please remember this mutation. In a patient of CML, if you find T315I mutation, this is worse. This is not going to respond to imatinib, dasatinib, and nilotinib. And also, very less likely that they will respond to ponatinib. So this is very difficult case. Patients who develop T315I mutation. This is a very bad mutation. There was a paper just few months back, a new drug that is called asciminib. I want your attention in this cartoon. This is inactive form. This is active form. This is ABL. And ABL kinase is inhibited here normally by this wire. ABL kinase is inhibited. If ABL BCR fusion occurs, then this is not inhibited. It becomes active and leads to neoplastic transformation. Now we have a drug known as asciminib, which blocks here this one. So the difference is that imatinib, dasatinib, they act through ABL kinase ATP binding site. But this is a different site. This is not the ATP binding site. So patients who develop mutation in ATP binding site and become resistant to imatinib, they can respond to this drug. And patients who develop 315T mutation, I mutation, they have shown response to this new drug. And the study was just phase 1 trial, and they are going to extend it to phase 2. There may be some other cause for resistance. And we did some study with the collaboration of Central Drug Research Institute, Lucknow, and tried to find out some other ways, some other pathways which are reason for resistance, other than P-loop mutation. And we found out that NF-kappa B glutathione was more in resistant patients. And now we are, with that group, we are trying to study the effect of some small molecule in these patients. And also we did some study on gene polymorphism to find out why our patients develop CML at earlier age, and had some small statistical correlation in patients who had null type of this. But this is not very important. The research is on, including 2 candidate molecules in collaboration with Central Drug Research Institute, Lucknow. This is evaluation of anti-leukemic activity of a potent compound, and the name of the compound is MND here. And I will show you the effect. This is apoptosis figure. Control, freshly diagnosed, those who respond to imatinib, those who do not respond. Now please focus on MND1, and this percentage of apoptosis. With imatinib, 4% apoptosis. With new drug, 18%. So this new drug is quite effective in patients who are having imatinib resistance. And also now they are preparing for a protocol for launching clinical trial. This is more clear in this table. I was stressing upon this mutation, T315I mutation, which is very resistant mutation, does not respond to available drugs. Percentage cell death, 4%, 8% with new drug, with the dasatinib, but with new drug, it is 34%. So this MND is going to be a very promising molecule if it shows its effectiveness in vitro and in vivo studies. And we have filed a patent for this also. And this is also very interesting. A drug which is used in leprosy, as we are discussing about dapsone in ITP, we are using anti-leprosy drug, that is clofazimine, anti-leprosy drug in CML also. And this paper was recently published in Hematologica. And just one slide I will show you. This is immunohistochemistry. This is vehicle, that means placebo. This is imatinib, clofazimine, and this is combination of clofazimine and imatinib. The killing of cell is significantly much more if you add clofazimine with imatinib. And these cells are, which one? T315I cells. very resistant cell. So again, this very promising molecule, repurposing of a drug which is already known to be used in leprosy, and I hope we will have good results in our other trials. So take-home message is, the advent of tyrosine kinase inhibitor has transformed chronic myeloid leukemia from potentially fatal disease to chronically manageable disease. Most patients of CML on TKI have nearly normal lifespan. Around 50% patients who opt for stopping drug can achieve operational cure. However, 20% patients fail to respond primarily due to resistance or relapse. Due to leukemic stem cells, research is in progress to understand mechanism of resistance, and some novel agents, as I have shown you, are shown to have promising role in these difficult cases. I have pleasure to acknowledge the team of Clinical Hematology Department of KG Medical University, Lucknow, Division of Biochemistry, Division of Toxicology of CDRI and IITR, and also funds from CST UP and Indian Council of Medical Research, and all patients who have consented to be part of this study. Thank you.
Any questions from the audience?
Yes.
There is a big problem of financial toxicity that is for the treatment of those patients. So what is that?
Now it is no more, because the cost of imatinib in free market,
Yes.
with your persuasion, you can get 800 rupees per month.
Yeah.
800 rupees per month you can get in free market. Good product, number one. Number two, we have this Asadhya Yojana, this Ayushman Yojana. It is covered, and the cost, the fund provided by the government is 5,000 per month. The actual expenditure may be 2,000 per month, but your institute would get 5,000 per month. So I think no patient should be left over. Every patient has right also and a facility, and it's our moral duty to offer imatinib to all our patients, because they have to save their life.
Thank you.
Sir, what is the dose of clofazimine? I am here.
This dose is not for patient. The dose was decided in the experiment, and they do cell culture, and depending on the cell's toxicity, they make different aliquots and dilution and test that.
Okay.
But this dose was in vitro cell culture dose. It is not applicable to the dose to be used in human being.
Do you recommend those who have a T135 mutation gene go for a bone marrow transplant?
Yes, the current treatment of choice of T315I mutant patient is allogeneic transplant, till we have a very effective drug like this.
Correct, correct.
Yes.
I think you have already told that the finance is not a problem, and imatinib, I think the UP government has also providing all the drugs free to all the cancer patients also. I
Yeah,
think
true.
it is so far every state government is
But
concerned
BHU,
now.
no, BHU does not get, because it's a central university. So here they can avail facility of Ayushman Yojana.
Okay.
All other state colleges they have, but BHU is central one.
So for the most of the states are concerned, not only the central government scheme also, now the government, any state government also procuring the imatinib as a bulk also. So for Odisha is concerned, not only imatinib, even nilotinib is also free. Now the government is procuring the nilotinib also, and asatinib can be procured by the government yojanas are concerned. But my comment is that, look, you have seen how the life cycle of the chronic myeloid leukemia has transformed from 10% of long-term survival to more than 90%. But things are not, you have to be very, very careful. I have to reiterate the constant or the very professional monitoring of the patients. If you don't, the golden line is that if you treat with imatinib, as Dr. Tripathi has shown, that 20% patient will have a primary resistance and 15 to 25% will have intolerance to imatinib. So roughly 30-35% will have no benefit from imatinib. This is one. And second is that if you do not monitor the patients, you have to monitor the patients regularly as per the European Leukemia Net guideline or NCCN guidelines. And if you intervene your therapy, either you increase the dose or you want to switch over to the second generation TKI, then only you can achieve the best result. If you delay it, the more you delay in identifying the imatinib resistance and initiating the appropriate therapy, the less is the result. That's the key. You cannot know any sub-therapy or any substandard management within 6 months or 1 year. If it comes in a relapse form after 1 year, this will be highly resistant to all over, even including the second-line drugs also. So the bottom line is that you should start with imatinib, monitor it properly as per the guideline, catch the resistance at earliest, and try to intervene with the increased dose or second dose TKI, then only you can achieve the maximum benefit. The subtherapeutic approach is going to cost the patient, which cannot be known in short span. It may be known after 1 year or even after 6 months.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tripathi. Shall we move on to the next talk?
Yeah, I think that's a smaller one.
Yeah.
Yes, this is more a clinical and more interactive one. Pancytopenia. What is pancytopenia? If hemoglobin is less than 11 gram %, if absolute neutrophil count less than 1500 per cubic millimeter, if platelets count less than 1 lakh, if all of three are present, then we are obliged to call as pancytopenia. It's a simple MBBS teaching. If there is pancytopenia, either it is because of decreased production of blood cells or it is because of increased destruction. There is one cause, one place where all the three components can be destroyed, that is spleen. So increased destruction, which is known as hypersplenism. Decreased production because of any reason, either because of bone marrow aplasia or because of dysplasia, because of some deficiency like B12 deficiency or even folate deficiency, because of toxicity to drugs or toxins, infections affecting bone marrow, fibrosis replacing bone marrow cells, and malignancy infiltrating bone marrow. So these are important causes which can lead to pancytopenia. Hypersplenism. These are features of hypersplenism. There is pancytopenia. Sometimes there could be bicytopenia as well. But traditionally we call pancytopenia. There is splenomegaly. Bone marrow should be normal. Production of blood cells should be normal. And there is improvement after splenectomy. So these are 4 features of hypersplenism. 3 features are diagnostic and 1 feature after treatment, that is after splenectomy. And these are causes of splenomegaly, which can lead to pancytopenia. The most important common one we see is chronic liver disease with portal hypertension, splenomegaly, tropical splenomegaly, or any other cause of splenomegaly leading to destruction of all 3 components of blood. So now let us see a case. 7-year-old boy has fever, anemia and bleeding, swollen gums and purpuric spots for 1 month. He has mild hepatomegaly and splenomegaly. Hemoglobin is 4 gram %, TLC 1100, very low, polymorphs 10%, lymphocyte 90%, platelets 15,000 only. So definitely there is pancytopenia because hemoglobin less than 11, TLC 1100, so definitely very low, and platelets less than 1 lakh. Patient has pancytopenia. On peripheral blood examination, there was no immature cell. So we will go for bone marrow examination. And this is leukemia. So even if there was absence of premature cell in peripheral blood, in these cases, bone marrow examination is must, because only bone marrow examination could tell the diagnosis in this case, that is acute myeloid leukemia. Here is another example. 24-year-old man presents with extreme weakness and mental dullness for 3 months. Examination reveals anemia without jaundice or organomegaly. Hemoglobin 5 gram, TLC 2300, DLC latest shift like lymphocytosis, platelets 36,000 and MCV 110, that is more. And now you can diagnose, there was a discussion on this case, the hypersegmented neutrophil, and this clinical finding is very important. Dr. Jaya, another from medicine side, they would agree with me that there is a hyperpigmentation of knuckles and also hyperpigmented patches over tongue and mucosa. This is very commonly seen in patients with severe B12 deficiency. Patient has macrocytic anemia and we diagnose as B12 deficiency. But to our surprise, you see, iron profile was normal, LDH is also high, suggestive of B12 deficiency, but B12 was very high. Then how should we go ahead? The one which we are thinking is completely ruled out by high B12 level. And this we generally see in our clinical practice. Even if B12 deficiency is there, B12 is very high because patient has been given injection. So what we do, we don't scrutinize too much. Patient has had injection, 2 injections few days back. So we don't do anything, just continue B12 and we closely follow patients and see the response. If patient continues to have response, that means patient has had B12 deficiency, and we monitor CBC, reticulocyte count, LDH and bilirubin level. By that we know that patient has had B12 deficiency and he had received injection, that's why B12 level was very high. And then even pharma says, suppose that you have so much high B12 level, why are you purchasing B12 injection? And even his relative doctors also oppose that B12 is very high and you are getting B12 injection. So that's a very tricky situation. The causes of B12 deficiency, low intake because of vegetarian diet, but more common factor in our population is low absorption because of various gastrointestinal problem. And also the patient is taking H2 blockers for gastritis for a long time. It suppresses acid secretion leading to decreased B12 absorption. And those who are taking pan masala and develop atrophic gastritis, they also suffer from hypochlorhydria and eventually B12 deficiency. So malabsorption is more a problem than diet. Because in literature, books say that it is because of vegetarian diet. But what we have seen that it is more commonly in those patients who have a reason to for malabsorption. Let's see another example. 35-year-old patient presented with severe anemia and moderate splenomegaly. Severe anemia, moderate spleen, CBC revealed pancytopenia. He had frequent non-specific pain in abdomen. So this pain is important, non-specific pain. These are important situations having pancytopenia with spleen, hypersplenism, myelofibrosis. Any other example you can suggest? Spleen with pancytopenia. Kala-Azar, pancytopenia spleen. But anything hypersplenism, that is included in hypersplenism. That is included in hypersplenism. Splenic enlargement due to Kala-Azar, splenic enlargement due to malaria, storage disorder. I have not taken that up because here 35-year-old. So. Okay, let's see. So bone marrow are hypoplastic. Now we have hypoplastic bone marrow, and so it cannot be hypersplenism now. And because he has non-specific pain in abdomen, so he had portal vein thrombosis and also reported to have had urine which is dark red colored. Yes, so we diagnosed, he had a very typical combination of myroaplasia, thrombosis and intravascular hemolysis. So very typical case of PNH. Diagnosis confirmed by hem or sucralolysis, but nowadays we confirm through FLAIR test. And patient was confirmed to have had PNH. So now these are diseases which are very much overlapping. And it depends at what stage patient comes to us. This is clonal hematopoiesis and this is autoimmune impact. If patient has initial autoimmune impact and hematopoiesis, he would present as aplastic anemia or PNH or both. If patient has problem with clonal malformation or clonal hematopoiesis, some change in genes, then patient may present asymptomatically like CHIP, or patient may present as MDS, or overlap like MDS and PNH all that. So now you can see these 4 or 5 entities, they are interrelated to each other depending on initial insult, whether in form of autoimmune or in form of clonal hematopoiesis. Now this example, 70-year-old presents with history of anemia for 8 months. He received blood transfusion 4 times. There is no history of fever, bleeding or recurrent infection. He had hematinic without any response. Clinical examination is not contributory except severe anemia. So on examination, there was no lymphadenopathy, no hepatomegaly, no splenomegaly. And also, history was also non-contributory. So elderly anemia without any finding, right? Let's see. These are causes of elderly anemia. We must consider chronic blood loss, malignancy or blood malignancy, CRF, myelodysplasia aplastic. These are important causes which we commonly see in patients, elderly patient with anemia. This patient has only anemia, nothing else. So it excludes malignancy, myelodysplasia aplastic. So possibility of chronic blood loss and chronic renal failure. Let's see, no. Findings are this: hemoglobin 6 gram, TLC also normal but ratio is disturbed. No immature cells, platelet 70,000, MCV high. So there is some degree of pancytopenia plus high MCV in elderly age. So possibilities are malignancy, hematological malignancy, myelodysplasia aplastic anemia. In these 4 conditions, you will have some degree of pancytopenia. Serum ferritin is very high, B12 folate normal, hepatic renal functions normal, TSH normal. So what is the possibility? Ferritin is high. There is macrocytosis and bone marrow is normo-hypercellular. Yes? No, there was no dysplasia. I should have mentioned. Peripherally, no immature, there was no sign of peripheral blood smear as well as bone marrow was also normal. There was no dysplasia. Had it been dysplasia, we would have diagnosed as MDS. So this condition is now this term is very relaxing and very useful for us. You don't have any diagnosis. You say idiopathic cytopenia of undetermined significance, ICUS. So for last 2 years, I have made this diagnosis significant number of people. I don't know the diagnosis, cytopenia. Patient is very happy that I am diagnosed and my diagnosis is ICUS. Yes. This is not a diagnosis. This is possibility. The idiopathic cytopenia, not a diagnosis. But this is the English term, good term. Everybody is very relaxed that diagnosis is ICUS. Idiopathic is not diagnosis. So. Just I am coming this, we'll discuss. So ICUS can be subclass. Now we can subclass in 4. Like I write my patient ICUS N. ICUS A means idiopathic anemia only. ICUS N means idiopathic neutropenia. ICUS T means idiopathic thrombocytopenia. A very good differential diagnosis for ITP. And ICUS for bi and pancytopenia. So these are 4 subdivisions. And now coming to your point, we also see LDH. It does help sometimes. LDH is high. And serum erythropoietin level, it has a therapeutic value. If serum erythropoietin less than 200 or 500, they are likely to respond to erythropoietin. Cytogenetic change, we do offer this test. And monosomy, the patient has monosomy 7. This very bad, worse situation, patient very soon is going to develop AML or MDS. And also molecular profile, and out of all panel, we have chosen 3, TET1, SXL3 and DNMT. If these are positive, that support the diagnosis of clonal hematopoiesis. But the treatment is supportive only at this stage. There should be close follow-up, and I have given erythropoietin in 2 patients in the last few months, and both have responded. And telling them that, okay, we are doing and we will repeat the bone marrow. They are not affordable for NGS, but they are somehow affording erythropoietin. So for clinicians, finally, if patient presents with pancytopenia, age is important, gender, history of fever, pallor, bleeding, infection, jaundice, lymphadenopathy, hepatosplenomegaly, Personal history very important for tobacco, pan masala, alcohol and drugs. Examination for anemia, for jaundice, for rashes, lymph node and liver spleen, and these are investigations. CBC, general blood picture, B12 level, bone marrow examination, serum LDH, flow cytometry for PNH, cytogenetics, and molecular tests. So take home message, pancytopenia is a common clinical problem. Hypersplenism is an important cause. Please rule out vitamin B12 deficiency. Bone marrow examination is needed in most cases to make a diagnosis. Advances in molecular test is now necessary, as we realize, in undetermined cases. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, Dr. Tripathi. Professor Jinnah, any comments, sir?
Professor Tripathi, you are in a hurry to leave probably. Anyway, it's a very important clinical entity where I strongly believe that morphology and particularly your bone marrow aspiration and bone marrow biopsy play a very important role in dealing with approach to pancytopenia. Approach to pancytopenia, again, it's a clinical act. You have to consider the history, your clinical findings, and your then investigations, hematological and other ancillary things also, depending on clinical. There are many secondary causes here, enumerated infections, lymphoproliferative disorders, hypersplenism, and all other causes, even the acute conditions also. You can have a pancytopenia like septicemia or any other conditions also. Depending on the clinical situation, you have to narrow down your DD and accordingly you have to go for investigations. Of course, the bone marrow aspiration, bone marrow biopsy and molecular test, in particular in an elderly test, will increase your diagnosis. So you have to consider all possible things to reach a pancytopenia diagnosis, and in spite of all your effort, if you are not able to reach the diagnosis, yet I think I have seen that terminology also that ICOS. ICOS has now come in a big one, so you can put the entity in the form of an ICOS.
Dr. Tilak, you want to say something?
I have an article on this ICUS, and they have discussed out what are the criteria before you can say ICUS, because it is something we cannot put it loosely, sir. Maybe if you start calling ITP as ICUS, then it will be a problem, sir. And I believe that ICUS entity does exist, and I have also started diagnosing them. Then this last hematocon that was held in Delhi, sir, there was some case that was presented, and I told that this possibility may be ICUS. And Professor H. Pati said this ICUS entity now does not exist. And he said it so authoritatively that even my confidence was shaken. Is it something like that? So what do you have to say about it? Does this exist? Doesn't it exist?
Idiopathic does not exist. It is idiopathic. It is temporary phenomena.
Right.
Once we have cause, then that will be replaced.
Right. But ICUS we can label, sir.
Oh, you can query. I means idiopathic. We do not know the cause. Maybe we do not know here, but patient goes somewhere else. You find the cause. So it's a transition process.
So they have
More of semantic value.
The criteria that they is that at least for 6 months you should have investigated him, and you do not find the cause, and then you should call it ICUS. I have an article.
Why 6 months? Why not 1 year?
Sir, they might have.
So again, it's very.
And then you have to follow it up and then see which way the disease evolves, and they have done a follow-up of about 10 or 12 patients. Some evolved into MDS, some resolved, some remained stable.
Exactly.
And that is why we are calling it idiopathic cytopenia of undetermined
Okay,
sequence.
so today you say ICUS.
Right.
After 6 months, patient develop clonal. So you say CICUS.
Yes, yes.
After 6 months,
Yes.
it evolves into MDS. Then you say MDS.
Yes,
So it's evolving process.
Yes.
Depending on the day you examine the patient,
Right.
you can name it.
Right.
ICUS transform into CICUS, into MDS, then AML. Maybe I saw a patient as a level ICUS or CICUS. After 1 year, he didn't come to me for 1.5 years. And he developed severe anemia, cytopenia. He went somewhere else. That was AML. So after 1.5 years, it becomes AML. The center where AML is diagnosed, they will say that our diagnosis were wrong. कह सकते हैं नहीं कह सकते. So it's the evolving process. So I said it's not a diagnosis. It's just a way to mentioning the situation.
I think a better term would be, it's a provisional diagnosis. At that point of
Yeah.
time, we say that, and it may
Exactly.
evolve or it may regress.
Exactly, yes.
Other thing is that there another entity, IDUS, idiopathic dysplasia of undetermined significance.
Yes,
You have significant
IDUS.
dysplasia and the patient is absolutely normal. So that entity as of now, does it exist or not? Because I also have an article.
IDUS, yes, it does. We have a review paper in a journal, that was, I forgot that, last year. So, IDUS is there. Dysplasia without any other thing.
The clonal markers on NGS, the panel 50G marker. If you do it on NGS and you have dysplasia only, you have cytopenia only, and you can prove that molecular assays are supported, then you can label them, and you have to closely follow them because they will eventually evolve into something.
Yes, yes.
As we already mentioned, it's just a provisional thing. When you have failed with all the modalities that are available to you, you label as ICOS. Maybe what is available to you, maybe I have worked in more than that. Maybe a Institute of Family Medicine Protection has many more investigations. That to the end is not there. But for our end, we label it as a provisional entity and stop.
When you should call it ICUS, and they have put 9 or 10 criteria, saying you can just
But sir, that has not found place in the WHO classification as of now. So there are many papers, but the consensus statement does not take into account these criteria. So we will go by what the consensus statement says. So there are many papers which are writing so much, but ultimately you are not going to treat such cases. Ultimately, you can't investigate too much for a thing which really has no significance at the moment. You are going to give them supportive care. Yeah, at the moment.
That's what you commit, of undetermined significance. So you are committing everything. Is it idiopathic, cytopenia, undetermined? So it's entirely provisional, yes.
Dr. Tilak, till it is a final, it is a diagnosis by exclusion. That's all.
And sir, I've seen, I have one case which I know that the patient underwent these mutations, basically ASX, LA1 and CSF-TR sometimes are associated with cytosis also. I mean, I know one case which has been MPNs. They are associated with cytosis and also with cytopenias, both of them.
And not only this, 7% patients are more than 70 of age will have this mutation, normal. You don't know the cause. That is called CHIP.
That is why clinical correlation is very important.
Follow-up and correlation is important. Because disease doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It may take years. So you must be vigilant enough.
No more questions. But remember, because Tripathi, because I don't know what is the experience of Professor Jinnah, but now we are seeing more and more cases of myelodysplastic. And many patients of chronic liver disease now are being referred by the gastroenterologist. No, first go to hematologist, see what is the cause of this pancytopenia. So do you think this number is increasing?
I agree. I fully agree with you that the incidence of the or reporting of the myelodysplastic conditions are increasing due to various factors. As the increased age also, as the life expectancy of the people have increased, as the age advances, they acquire the mutations and aberrations also. And these explore, so these toxic matters explosion also. I have my PhD work was revolving around that also. Those people who are exposed to these toxic matters, so they have lot of chromosomal abnormalities, aberrations also, which can give rise to myelodysplasia also. Thirdly, many of the drugs also, which are used for now more and more drugs are used for variety of conditions. That is another cause why it can cause also myelodysplasia. Overall, the myelodysplastic conditions are increasing. That also we are reporting for.
So that's why I feel that instead of bone marrow aspiration, bone marrow biopsy is mandatory now.
Yes, so far the
Every case should go for a bone marrow biopsy.
So far the dealing with pancytopenia or any cytopenia, I will always go for the bone marrow aspiration, and bone marrow biopsy and preserve the sample for many other tests also, depending on how it evolves also, because you can't go on again and again. You have to preserve the samples for many cytogenetics and molecular marker also. This is a must. This would be done.
Thank you, Dr. Tripathi. That's very wonderful.
Thank you, sir, for the illuminating talk. I now invite Professor VP Singh sir to present Professor A.K. Tripathi sir with a small token. I now request Professor Tripathi sir to present Professor VP Singh sir with the